Welcome, everyone. You are on air with the COPD Foundation. My name is Mike Hess. I am Senior Director of Public Outreach and Education for the COPD Foundation. I'm a respiratory therapist by training. I've been working with COPD patients for about 15 years now. I'm really excited to kick off this Facebook premiere event today. We've got a couple of really interesting points to talk about today. First off, we're going to be talking about inhaler choice and technique, because it is very important for people living with COPD to work with their healthcare providers to really develop a personalized treatment plan that works for them. A part of that personalized COPD treatment plan is finding the inhaler that works best for the individual person and learning how to use it correctly, because not all inhalers are the same. We're also going to be talking about the importance of establishing and maintaining a COPD care routine. Daily routines can help people manage their COPD so that it becomes just another part of their day. For many folks with COPD, this involves taking a daily maintenance therapy or making sure your rescue inhaler is with you before you leave the house. However, the COVID-19 pandemic surely caused many people to rethink their daily routine. And so we also have to talk about adjusting COPD care during the COVID-19 pandemic and reestablishing a regular routine after that, because we all know that COVID-19 certainly upended many aspects of our lives and changed the way we do pretty much everything, including meet with our healthcare providers. When living with COPD, it's really important for people to continue seeing their care team with in-person or virtual appointments as they're comfortable. So next off, I'm going to ask all of our panelists today to introduce themselves, starting with Dr. Solaire.
Hello, Mike, Pam, Jimmy, thanks for joining. It's a true privilege to be here today. And thanks to the COPD Foundation for organizing this venue and for the invite. I'm Xavier Soler, pulmonologist, Associate Professor of Medicine at UC San Diego and Global Senior Medical Director at Regeneron. I have been treating patients with COPD for about 25 years, and I'm currently located in San Diego, California.
Great, thank you. In addition to Dr. Solaire and myself, we have a couple of true experts with us today, folks living with COPD, starting off with Jimmy.
Thank you, Mike. As Mike said, my name's Jimmy. I am from Elk Grove, California. After 10 years of being in and out of hospitals with pneumonia, I was finally diagnosed with COPD in 2010.
Great, thank you, Jimmy. And last but certainly not least, we also have Pam with us today. Pam?
Well, thank you, Mike, for the introduction. I was diagnosed with COPD in 1989, and I did not take it seriously. And like many other people, I continued to smoke. And I continued to smoke until I really couldn't, I had a lot of trouble breathing. So at that time is when I decided I would quit smoking. And I've learned how to live with it after all of these years.
All right, great. Thank you, Pam. So before we get into too much of the meat and potatoes today, I do want to just set up some ground rules for everybody to engage with us today and respond to questions as they come through, because of course you may have some questions. We're going to be addressing a lot of the questions that we commonly hear about inhalers and COPD management and all that sort of thing. But if you do have questions that we haven't addressed during the event, I invite you to drop them in the comment section, and the COPD Foundation team will certainly respond to them as soon as we can. You can also find some additional information about COPD on our website at www.copdfoundation.org, where you can join our online community, COPD 360 Social. Over 50,000 people involved in the COPD community, sharing their insights and helping everybody else along the path. I also invite you to download our COPD Pocket Consultant Guide mobile app, which is available for free on both Android and iOS. And that has a lot of helpful resources, including videos that demonstrate how to use some of the COPD inhalers we will be discussing today. So with all that said, we're going to jump into starting off with inhaler choice and technique today, because as many of us know, it's really important for people living with COPD, again, to work with their healthcare providers to develop that personalized treatment plan that works best for them. And part of that is certainly finding the inhaler that works best for each individual person. A lot of folks with COPD, particularly when newly diagnosed, may not realize at first that the medicines we use can be delivered in different kinds of inhalers, all of which work differently, require different skills and techniques to use, and can be significantly different from each other. So first off, I'd like to toss it over to Dr. Solaire. For folks who may not be aware, can you first give us a little bit more background about COPD itself, and then tell us why inhaler choice and technique is so critical?
Thank you, Mike. COPD stands for chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. It's a chronic respiratory disorder usually caused by the tobacco exposure, but also to other pollutants as well as fumes, and affects the airway or the lung tissue, sometimes both. Symptoms of this condition includes shortness of breath, cough, sputum production, but also fatigue, sleep disorder, wheezing. It can be some of them, all of them. It's a chronic and sometimes progressive disease. Currently, we don't have a cure, but we have certain treatments to reduce the disease burden. On top of the non-pharmacological treatments, and certainly stop the tobacco use or exposure to fumes, inhalers are the current cornerstone therapy for that condition. And significant advances have been made in both the formulation of the drugs as well as the delivery systems. It's extremely important to know how to use correctly the inhalers in order to be sure that those medicines get into your lungs. And then also it's important to know all the options available for the patients. Those choices should be individualized or tailored to the patient's needs and preferences. So you need to work with your healthcare provider to be sure that you pick the choice that you are more comfortable with and that you match your skills and your condition as well. So in my clinic, or the clinic that I used to have, just for instance, we used to call the patients to bring their inhalers, and then we show them how to use them, and then we try to go over every single step to be sure that they have full compliance and full understanding of those devices. Also, it's important to look for different available links, for instance, like there's professional organizations that they may have, like the COPD Foundation, as Mike said already, that can provide very useful information how to use those devices as well. So we need to be sure that we, again, we show the patients how to assemble the use of the inhalers, how to use them, and demonstrate in every visit.
Pam and Jimmy, as I mentioned, you're our experts on the panel today, and we want to turn to you as individuals living with COPD and find out a little bit more about how you and your healthcare team decided which inhaler worked best for you, and then also how you learned to use that inhaler. Maybe you can give us some tips for the audience here. So Pam, I'd like to start with you. If you can tell us a little bit more about your experience.
When I first was given my first inhaler, there was no training whatsoever. They just handed it, well, they handed me the prescription and I went home and I got it. And I just read the instructions, and back then it was just a simple puff on it. And so it wasn't too hard. But if I had known more, I would have had my doctor, I would have insisted that he showed me how to use it. Training is very essential with inhalers, because if you don't know how to use it, it's not doing you any good. And now there's so many different devices on the market and different medications that you don't have to just use a medication that might work just a little bit for you. You can talk with your doctor and get one that works very well for you. So make sure if you have any problems to go to your doctor and say, this is not working for me, I would like to try something else.
Great. Always important to be able to advocate for yourself. So Jimmy, how about your perspective? What was your experience like finding the right inhaler and then learning how to use it?
When finally diagnosed after having difficulty breathing for many, many years prior, my primary doctor finally gave me a referral to my first pulmonologist. Up until this point, I had not taken my breathing issues serious. In fact, my condition got so bad that I had to finally quit work because I could no longer perform the task that my employer required of me. When I was prescribed an inhaler for the first time, I was shown it once in the doctor's office, and then I was sent home with no instructions, no on how to use the inhaler, no on what side effects to look for. I had no idea at that point. Fortunately for me, my very first appointment with my pulmonologist was an awesome one. I received a lung function test right there in his office. And unfortunate for me, it was a sad result. I had stage 4 end stage right off the bat. My lung doctor stepped up to the plate. He equipped me with several inhalers. Then he gave me the necessary instructions on how to use the inhalers. And then he turned me over to his office nurse, where she took it upon herself to show me over and over till she was comfortable. I knew what I was doing and what I needed to look for when I got home. I went home 1 week later decided I needed to move to Northern California, where I was introduced to a handful of lung doctors and a super team of respiratory therapists. They took me under their wing and taught me all about the illness. They showed me warmth. They gave me over and over instructions on how to do, when to do, what to do, and who to call when I needed to call someone. So it was an awesome experience for me. Because of them, I made a big decision on day one of my new journey with COPD. I cried, I got mad, and then I stopped, looked myself in the mirror and said, either get on board or give up. And I guess you could tell that I didn't give up. I'm still here today, going strong 24 years later. I am a miracle, no doubt in my mind, and I'm proud to be here today sharing my journey with you in hopes that you will see how important having open lines of communication with your lung doctors, your primary doctors, and your respiratory team is.
Absolutely. Communication is essential to creating these good individualized therapy plans. So now I want to move on to kind of the next step. Once you've had these, the inhaler discussion, and once you've found a thing that works for you, I want to discuss a little bit more about how you integrate that into your daily routine. You know, of course, everybody's experience with COPD and with inhalers is going to be a little bit different. Each person is going to have a slightly different routine that works for them. And again, that's why it's so important to have these things individualized. So Jimmy, I'd like to start with you this time and talk a little bit more about your daily care routine. How did you establish a routine that really works for you?
Because of my amazing care team, I wake up every day knowing what to check, what to do, and what not to do. And the most importantly, who to call when something arises. I use my inhalers every day. I have a set routine that helps me remember to take my inhalers at the same time every day. I wake up, I make coffee, I turn around and I do my maintenance inhaler, followed by taking a handful of medications. As a reminder, I have a cell phone annoying rooster alarm going off to remind me every single day. I was lucky to have a super team assigned to me. My lung doctor went above and beyond by giving me his personal cell phone number. And he looked me in the face and he said, Jimmy, the girls, meaning my respiratory team, they said, you're scared. I'm giving you my name and number in your phone, and you will never have to be scared again. You can call or text me 24/7 with any questions or concerns that you may have. I just like my mouth dropped. I couldn't believe that a doctor would do this. And I was just totally blown away. But I could tell everybody out there listening today that that really did take the edge off of me, and I was no longer scared. I knew that the pulmonologist was going to save me each and every time I had a fear or a question or a concern.
That really is some remarkable lines of communication you have there. So that's fantastic. Pam, a similar question to you. How did you come up with a routine that worked with your lifestyle?
My doctor and I worked together to find the best inhaler and the best device that would work for me. I have a little bit of an issue because I have Bell's palsy, and certain inhalers I can't use. And so we worked together till we found out which one would work for me and which medication worked best for me. What I do to remember to take it is I line all of my medications up on one side of a table. When I take it, I move it over to the other side, so I know that I took it, because that was before electronic devices out there. And then I would write myself notes sometimes too, because I would forget. Now, after all these years, I don't forget. I mean, and if I start to forget, I'll start putting it in an electronic. But so far, the way I use it works pretty well for me.
Excellent. So Dr. Solaire, any tips from your side of the stethoscope on getting people to establish these solid care routines every day?
I think that these two testimonials from Pam and Jimmy shows clearly how the communication in two ways is so important, because when the patients take ownership of their own disease, which is what is happening here, discussing with their physicians and other health providers how to do what and when, establishing this care routine, which is extremely important. And then when you have certain limitations, like Pam with her condition, so that needs to adjust or adapt to different inhalers, I think it speaks by itself. As well, the COVID, we are in a different situation right now, and we need to adjust also to this new routine, being more home, perhaps doing some kind of telemedicine with our health providers, and then the vaccination, extremely important too, when and how. Certainly everyone that doesn't have any contraindication needs to get vaccinated, but not only to the COVID, which we should, but also keep in mind that the flu, and if you are not, the pneumonia, etc. So what I hear, it's music to my ears in many ways, because you both are extremely engaged with your providers, and you have the ownership of your disease.
Absolutely. Dr. Solaire, you bring up some excellent points here, and that helps us get into our next section here, because it does seem virtually certain that many patients care, especially with COPD. Many of those care routines were changed during the COVID-19 pandemic. It certainly presented challenges for virtually everyone, but perhaps even more so for those navigating a chronic condition like COPD. A lot of folks, it seems like they've started to rely on virtual visits with healthcare providers, doing these kinds of conferences for better or for worse. But despite the changes that COVID-19 brought to everyone's lives, I'd say it's still vital that people living with COPD continue to prioritize their care by continuing to meet with their doctors, their nurse practitioners, their physician assistants, everybody who continue the conversations related to their treatments. Pam, I'm going to throw it back to you for a second. I'd like to get a little bit more insight into your experience living with COPD during this pandemic.
COVID had a big impact on my life this past year, because I came down, I was the first person in my county to come down with COVID in March of 2020. I had many, many doctor visits and tests and all of that going, and I had to leave the house all that time. And so I was always very careful. I wore a mask, and sometimes I'd even wear plastic gloves. Then I had to go see my pulmonary doctor, so I continued with my 3 months visits with him, and I had CAT scans and my pulmonary function tests done when they opened that back up in the fall. It's very, very important to keep seeing him, because your lungs are more, they're affected a little bit more with COVID. But even now today, I'm still wearing gloves and masks when I leave the house. But it's just important to make sure you protect yourself. Go out there and go see your doctor. For me, virtual visits would not work, because all of the doctors wanted to check me and see how I was doing. And so I had to go in. But if you feel a bit more comfortable using virtual visits, do that. And so you don't have to leave the house, but you do need to continue your care.
Absolutely. And it sounds like you were very well able to do that. So Jimmy, now it's your turn. Can you share with us your experience living with COPD during the pandemic?
I sure will. Thanks, Mike. I panicked in the beginning of the pandemic. I stopped my caregiver from coming into my home. I stopped my family from coming into my home, and I stopped my neighbors. I stopped all communication with live-to-live contact. The unknown scared me, because I get up every day already dealing with the unknown of the lungs. So I did not want to complicate things. So for about 30 days, I just shut the whole world off. And then finally I woke up and said, look, I have to deal with COPD first and foremost before anything else, because if you're gasping for breath, nothing else matters. So it just made sense for me to get back hold of myself and reel myself in. I, like Pam, only went out of this house to my doctor's appointments. The same thing with me. The doctor wanted to see me in person. I have a lot of underlying conditions, so edema is one of them, and you have to do a push test, and the doctor can't rely on seeing that on a screen. So in-person visit was important for me as well. But that was the only appointment that I kept for over 16 months. I never had any other contact with the world except my primary doctor. I'd like to share with everyone. Just remember that you have to talk with your doctor or your team if you want to get the right information back. And remember, if they won't listen to you, they can't fix us. So it's a two-way street of communication. And it is so very important in today's world that you have that line of communication. And I promise you, one size doesn't fit all.
Excellent points, Jimmy. Thank you. Dr. Solaire, any final thoughts on COPD care during the pandemic?
Yeah, I think they explaining perfectly. This communication is extremely important, and being sure that you listen to your doctor, but at the same time, the doctor listens to you. I don't think you need to go only to North California to be treated for COPD. Across the US and almost all the world, you can find people that are going to listen to you and give you the right treatment and the right options. And again, these choices needs to be shared. The patient needs to be heard and need to participate on their decisions.
Great. Well, thank you very much. This has been a fantastic discussion. I'd like to extend my sincere thank you to Dr. Solaire, to Pam, and to Jimmy for being with us here today on sharing their journeys and knowledge along the way. I'd also like to do a special shout out to Jimmy, special recognition to Jimmy, who is retiring from his many years of advocacy. You've heard him discuss advocacy a couple of times today. He's getting a well-deserved retirement from advocating on behalf of the community. So Jimmy, thank you very much for your tireless work as an advocate for yourself and everyone else living with COPD.
Thank you, Mike. First, I want to thank everybody out there who's watching this, because if you're watching this, this means that you care about your illness. And again, the more you learn, the better you'll breathe. Let me start off by thanking the foundation for allowing me the opportunity of being a participant in this event today. Second, I would like to thank BI for putting this event on. Without companies like yours, we would not have the platforms that we need to help advocate for this illness. As a California state captain, it has been an honor and a privilege to truly advocate for the COPD patient. I have held this title of California State Captain very proudly and have met a lot of great people during my journey as a captain. I made a deal way back in 2010, February 25th. I asked the Lord if he would agree to let me live. I would do everything in my power plus one, and I would never stop talking about COPD till he takes me off this earth. I would like to believe that I have lived up to that request that I asked God to give me, and here I am 24 years later, still going strong. So I'm very proud of that. My therapist, wow, what can I say? My doctors and therapists have made my journey so much easier and so much painless than I could ever imagine. 12 years, I've been able to give back to any COPD patient who wants to learn and live a life with COPD like I was given. My only hope and prayer today is that I made a difference to at least one person who truly was scared and unsure of what was next for them, that I was able, by learning about this disease and understanding this disease, made it easier for them.
Well, thank you, Jimmy. Certainly leaving some big shoes to fill, but if any of you out there are inspired by Jimmy's story or Pam's story, we're always looking for people living with COPD and otherwise interested in the community who would like to step up to volunteer, become a community advocate, become a state advocacy captain. If this is something that is of interest to you, I ask you to reach out to us through our website. That's again, www.copdfoundation.org. And we can certainly connect you with the right people to help you get started on your advocacy journey. Dr. Solaire, I'll give you a moment first to say thank you, and then also offer your last thoughts here.
Yeah, thank you very much to the COPD Foundation for leading this space. Also to you, Mike, for being an excellent host, and to the patients, which are the reason that we exist, and we try to do, more and more as, times to come. Thank you.
And Pam, you get to bring us home.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be on this panel. I just want to encourage everyone to continue living your life the best you can. Do not be afraid.
It's a great note to end on. Thank you. Also, finally, a big thank you to everybody out there in the audience today for joining us on this Facebook premiere event. We hope that this has provided you with some excellent tips and some thoughts about inhaler choice, establishing a routine that works for you, and making sure that you adjust to your COPD care during the pandemic so that you're still maintaining those open lines of communication with your care team. I would just remind you that everybody's journey and experience with COPD is going to be a little bit different. You should definitely be talking to your healthcare provider about the treatment, inhalers, and routines that are best suited to you. And again, for any additional information, please come visit us at the COPD Foundation website, www.copdfoundation.org, and get some additional information out there. So thank you once again for joining us today. Be safe and breathe easy.